Okay, we'll make a start. Good morning, everybody. My name is Louise Rance, and this seminar is an IR35 recap. So this is a little bit about me. I'm a HR business partner and a workplace mediator for Clover HR. Those are my contact details. This is Clover HR, some of the rest of the team. So there's over 20 HR consultants and HR business partners that work for Clover HR, and we're here to help you in any way we can. Between us, we've got over 200 years experience. Sounds a lot, doesn't it? Between us all, we're all professionally qualified, and we all have our specialisms in the areas of people, which is covering recruitment, training, coaching, well-being, rewards, mediation, and many other people strategies. There is a Q&A function on the webinar, so if you have any questions as I'm going through, please pop them on there, and then as I come to the end, I'll check to see if any of them haven't been answered during the webinar, and then I'll answer them then. I have muted your microphones at the moment. That's just so that the webinar flows, but I will unmute your microphones at the end in case there's anything that you want to ask me. That might be a bit time dependent, but we'll see how we go on. So this is what we're going to cover today. The reason this is a recap is because the changes to IR35 actually came into place on the 6th of April. But we're going to be going into what is IR35, what's it all about. We're going to look at the impact of the changes to IR35 have for companies. So this webinar is from a company's or organisation's perspective. We'll be looking at what actions do you need to take as a result of these changes if you've not already taken them. What are the implications if you get it wrong, and where can you get further help and support? So first of all, what is IR35? So the IR35 rule, or off-payroll legislation, which is what it actually is, first introduced in 2000, so it's been around for quite a while. In April 2017, the public sector were given responsibility for determining contractors' status and establishing tax liability. And the main change that's come about from the 6th of April this year is that this will now also include private companies and voluntary organisations. The liability for determining tax status will be changed from the contractor, which is where it rested previously, to the client or the fee payer. So why has this change been brought in? So as I've said, this legislation was originally introduced in 2000, and the reason behind it was that Inland Revenue felt they were missing out on chunks of revenue, and they wanted to equalise the tax position between employees and individuals that provide their services, usually using a limited company, often called a personal services company. To explain that personal service company in a bit more detail. So for instance, I'm a HR consultant and I set up a limited company to provide my services. So I would usually have myself as the director and one other person. And then the fees that I charge clients, the invoices would come from that company. And from that company, I would be paid a fee or a dividend. And that's what a personal services company is. So you often find people like HR consultants, IT consultants, financial, etc., can often use personal services company as well as a other host of companies in the industry. So the reason the legislation was introduced was to ensure that a person acting as a contractor paid the same tax and insurance as if they were actually an employee, if it was found that they had similar functions to an employee, and we'll talk about what that means as we go along. So it's a way of Inland Revenue ensuring that contractors pay the correct tax. When this change was made in 2017 and responsibility was transferred from the public sector to establishing the tax status from the contractors, Inland Revenue claimed that it had raised an additional £5.5 million in revenue. So as you can see, it's got wide-reaching implications. If you think about all the costs that the government's incurred as a result of the pandemic with furlough, grants, the whole vaccination program, everything, all that money that's been spent, and the reduction in GDPR, then you can see that annual review will be keen to collect any additional revenue that they can. So who does the change affect? The change is to move responsibility from the contractor to the client for medium and large sector employers. So small businesses will be exempt from this obligation, and the responsibility will remain with the contractor for small businesses. The definition of a medium to large business has 2 or more of the following features. So there's a turnover of more than 10.2 million. There's a balance sheet total of more than 5.1 million, or 50 or more employees. So to meet the medium to large definition, you meet 2 of those indicators. So it only includes, this legislation only includes if an individual is engaged by a client to carry out the work, and that individual works through an intermediary, which is usually a personal service company, as I explained. So if this is the case, and you use contractors that use personal services companies, it'll be important to determine if the IR35 rules apply to that engagement, if your company meets the medium to large definition. What's important to note is, and to be clear, these rules don't apply when, as a client, you engage an individual worker directly, i.e. a sole trader who doesn't operate through a PSC, a limited company. So what action do you need to take? You'd either need to take or have taken these actions. So identify and review your current engagement with contractors. Decide who in your company is going to do this, which could be internal HR, payroll, or you could contract the service as an external consultant. You'd need to speak to the contractors and explain what the process is. And one of the things that can help you with this, if you go into the gov.uk website, they've got a really useful model email that you can use that communicates the changes to your contractors and what factors you'll be looking at and what the effect potentially will be on them. You'll need to do a determination to see if you feel the contract falls inside or outside of the IR35 rules. To do this, you can use HMRC's online assessment tool. It's called the CESS tool, Check Employment Status tool. That you go on that, you put in all the information, and that will produce a determination which you can use as evidence of the assessment. You'll need to put a system in place that will deliver a fair and consistent outcome each time you engage a contractor. So you'll need a process going forward, and you'll need to have a system to collect and store your assessment decisions in case they are queried by HMRC. So what do you do next? Once the status is determined, you'll issue a status determination statement to the contractor, which will outline if they fall inside or outside of IR35, giving reasons for your decision, and you need to give them the right of appeal, and they can appeal within 45 days. And you communicate that status determined statement down the contractual chain. And what I mean by that is, for instance, you might engage the services of a contractor through an agency, an intermediary. If that contractor is not a direct employee of the agency and they have self-employed status, you would send the SDS, the statement determined statement, to that agency, who would then pass it on to the contractor. Once you've sent it to the agency, you've discharged your responsibility, and it's then up to the agency to then deduct any tax and national insurance if they determine their contractor falls within IR35. So if they fall within IR35, then the client, maybe yourself or the fee payer, will deduct tax and national insurance in the same way that you would for an employee. And just important to note that establishing the tax position and establishing the status of whether contractor is self-employed, a worker or employee, are not the same thing. So you could establish that a contractor falls within IR35, but that doesn't mean that they will automatically become a worker or an employee. you need to look at other factors as well. So if you determine that the contractor falls outside of IR35, then the contractor themselves remains liable for paying the tax and national insurance as a self-employed person, and it remains their responsibility to do so. You've discharged your responsibility. So when you this CEST tool, what factors is it looking at, or what factors will you be looking at when you're determining if somebody falls inside or outside of IR35? These are the three main factors. Is there a right of substitution? So if you've contracted, have the services of a contractor, could they send another person in their place? Does it state that on their contract? Does that happen in reality? And if they can send a substitute, then that's a stronger indicator that the relationship is a contractor and customer one rather than an employee and employer. Degree of control. So where the worker has a large degree of control over how the job or the assignment is completed, this again is seen as a strong indicator that it's a contractor-client relationship. And interestingly, the Uber case, which was more about establishing worker status, the element of control was a strong factor within that. And this mutuality of obligation. So if there's no obligation on either side, either the client or the contractor, for the client to either offer work or for the contractor to accept work, this again is a strong indication of a contract-customer relationship. So what about if you don't get it quite right? What happens if a mistake's made on determination? So where you've made a status determination that the contractor falls outside of the IR35 rules, it's essential that you've taken reasonable care in making that decision. If reasonable care is not taken, then any status determination you've made will not be valid. And it'll be the client of the contractor who will be liable to pay any unpaid tax or national insurance. So this is a strong reason for making sure that you get it right. Because as a company, you will be liable for paying that tax and national insurance if Inland Revenue think you've determined it incorrectly. There is a bit of easement on this. So in February 2021, the government produced new guidance which confirmed that companies will not have to pay penalties on any inaccuracies within the first 12 months of the new rule, unless there's clear evidence of non-compliance. So providing you've done your best and you can evidence you've done your best, you have got a bit of breathing space. And the aim with that is to help company implement the new rules whilst also recognising difficulties that we've all been working under as a result of the pandemic. So other considerations that you've got here as a company or as an organisation. So what if a contractor is found to be inside of IR35? What happens if they then say, well, actually, because I'm now paying tax and national insurance as I would as an employee, I actually want the benefits of being an employee. And I think my contract is more that I am an employee when I've looked at the factors. What are you going to do about it? And that will be for your consideration. You will need to look at the factors as to whether that person should be a worker or an employee. And is that the position that you want? If a contractor is found to be inside IR35, again, they may want higher fees to compensate them because they're going to be paying more tax and national insurance. So you need to be aware that that might happen and think what your stance is going to be on that. And that will obviously depend on how valuable they are to your company. The contractor may make the decision to leave the contract because actually it's no longer as profitable for them as it was. Or the contractor may wish to renegotiate the terms of the contract regarding the way it's set up. So it does fall outside of IR35. So they might want to look at those three factors that we've looked at to make an alteration to the relationship. And if you do determine that a contractor is found to be outside of IR35, it's important that they're not then treated as part of the workforce. And if they have been before, that they no longer are. So this will be things like not allocating them a parking space, not inviting them to in-company training or paying for their training or to social events. So this is a case study just to kind of try and bring that to life. So in this case, Vasilis is a risk management consultant for a large pharmaceutical company, and he has set up a personal services company, a PSC. His contract was agreed for 7 months, followed by a month-by-month rolling basis. He's approached by his client, who's looked at these off-payroll rules, the IR35, and determined that his work falls within the rules. So he's given a status determination statement, which sets out the decision and the reasons for it. This means that the client's view is that he would be classed as an employee for tax purposes. And that outcome's been determined because the client views he works in a similar way to that of an employee. That's for a number of reasons, but includes that the client controls where he works, he's got management responsibilities, and he's unable to take any other work alongside his role, another key factor. Income tax and national insurance contributions will now be deducted before Vasilis receives his payment. Vasilis will still be required to submit a tax return, but relief is available for tax already paid. So this is from a client's point of view, the same case study. So Andrew's working in the finance department of this pharmaceutical company. He's learned about the changes to the off-payroll working rules, and he uses the guidance on gov.uk to learn more. He's allocated the task of identifying which contracted workers are affected by the change. He uses the CESS tool on the Inland Revenue website on a case-by-case basis to determine who will be affected, and he contacts them individually to explain that process. The one contractor he contacts is Vasilis, the risk management consultant. Having established that Vasilis is determined to be an employee for tax purposes, Andrew sends Vasilis a status determination statement. As the company pays Vasilis's PSC directly for the work, Andrew now sets him up on the payee system and deducts income tax and national insurance before paying him for his services. So where can you find more information? You can look at the government website. There's lots of useful resources on here, including some communication resources. So that's www.gov.uk. You can look at the CIPD website. I've got some fact sheets that you can go through there. And of course, you can contact us at Clover HR, and we will happily assist you with looking through your contracts and helping you with the status determination. So in summary then, we've looked at what IR35 is and how the change may affect your company regarding the tax status of your contractors. We've considered what action you need to take, what factors you need to take into account, and the consequences of making a mistake. I'm just going to have a look here. I've got a question. Is IR35 relevant to sole traders based outside of the UK working for a UK company? If it's a UK company, then the rules do apply to you. Regarding, yes, so I would say because it's a UK company, even though the sole trader is working outside of the UK, you're a UK company. If it's not a UK company, then it doesn't apply. So I hope that helps. Okay, so I am going to see if I can unmute. Can you just unmute yourselves? Hopefully I've done it. Right, I'm allowing you to unmute yourselves, so hopefully you can. Has anybody got any questions? Okay, yeah, I'm having a bit of trouble unmuting you. Do you want to type in any questions that you've got, and I'll just answer them from the Q&A? Okay, so I've got a question here. Hi, useful information. Could you repeat the part about sending the SDS to agencies so they can determine status? Yes, Helen. So if you use an agency, and if the agency has the contractor and the contractor is self-employed to the agency, you would send the SDS to the agency, your statement determination statement to the agency, and they would pass it on to the contractor. So you would need information from the agency about that contractor status so you can make the determination. All right, another question. I run my own consultancy and have 10 different clients, but one of them is Amazon. Is now claiming I'm to go on PAY through their agency. I disagree. Okay, Gerard, there is a right to appeal against the status determination statement. You've got 45 days to do so. So in that appeal, you would need to state why you disagree. Looking at those factors that I've talked about, I would concentrate on those and then see what they come back with. Okay. Okay, so I hope that's been useful for you. As I say, if you've got any questions after the after this webinar, then please do feel free to contact me. I hope you've all found it useful, and thanks very much for your participation. I'm just going to check the questions to make sure I've got them all. Hang on. Okay, no, there's a couple more here. I'll just run through these quickly. Okay, from Rebecca, if we're a small company with a definition of small, medium, large, do we need to contact the contract status to state the IR35 rules apply, but we are not the person to determine the status? Okay, Rebecca. So no, you don't. If you're in a small company, then the liability still rests with the individual contractor. If you wanted to, you could communicate that you've considered the IR35 rules and you do fall with a small company, so the responsibility rests with them, but there's no requirement on you to do that. Anthony, as a site manager with a limited subcontract and via a recruitment agency, do I fall under IR35? Anthony, the answer is you may do if you work through a limited company yourself. So what I would suggest you do is speak to the recruitment agency about IR35 and ask what their view is. But I would say potentially you do. Okay. Is there any other questions anyone wants to pop in the Q&A box? Okay. Oh, hang on. I think we might have just got another one there. Yeah. Thank you. You're very welcome, Anthony. Okay, well, thanks very much for your participation. As I say, feel free to get in touch with me. This is me, Louise Rance, HR Business Partner at Clover HR, and those are my contact details. Okay, and have a great day. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gail. Okay, bye everybody.